So welcome back, everybody. This is Paul again. I'm going to talk a little more about esoteric science and math, and I'm going to talk a little bit about sound today and how sound is involved in esoteric teachings and modern understanding of our existence here. Now, again, as I repeated in all the episodes so far, the ancient teachings suggest that, or teach basically that consciousness, our awareness, is integrated and has its roots in the infinite divine information plane, you might say, the cosmic intelligence and all that. And that cosmic intelligence is whatever, we can have our opinion about it, okay? We can debate and argue about why it exists or if it exists, whatever, but the ancient meditators and sages basically said, look, whatever justification or definition you make for this, whether you call it God or any other thing you want to call it, the fact is that our intelligence, and we're just here, we just got born, and we're being created and sustained constantly, our little bodies here and our brains, trying to figure out everything. But the reality is that this cosmos is conscious, okay? The whole thing, there's one unit, we call it unity, the non-dual, the ultimate, the God, the unspeakable name. So, a lot of the ancient teachings talk about sound as being the Om, the God created the world, or everything just started from sound. The Shabda Brahman, or the sacred sound, the holy name. And so naturally, we have concepts about it, and what does that mean? So there's symbols about it that ancient teachers left us. And if you look at the symbol, the circle with this point in the middle, you think about, in my previous example, of a pond where it's perfectly quiet and you throw a rock in there and it starts a whole sequence of waves, okay? So basically the underlying concept of the cosmos and esoteric science is that there was an underlying existence. It's not like something came from nothing. There isn't nothing, okay? Whatever this existence is, you can argue about it till the cows come home, but there's something. There's existence. There's a cosmic information plane. There's a cosmic radiation background, or there's a dark matter, or there's a dark energy, or something. There's something that exists beyond us, long before us. And from that, everything comes out and rises. It doesn't start from nothing. There's something that exists, and from that comes up and back. So basically, the cosmic teachers of the ages say there's something called pralaya, which in all different cycles of even the cosmos, that there's a point where everything comes back to one and rests. Like even if you throw a rock in the pond, it'll vibrate for a while and everything will happen. The frogs will jump out of their places and fish will move around, and eventually everything will kind of settle down and there's no more vibration and something else continues. So in the biggest concept of that, long time ago, there's a cosmic sound, and that cosmic sound resonates throughout eternity. The Om, the vibration of God, the cosmic breath. It is a vibration on a fundamental level that sort of, you might say, seeps into matter, and the consciousness behind it seeps into existence and creates all kinds of different beings. And in the cosmic idea of the esoteric teachings, that there's, just like matter evolves, you might say, from subatomic particles, and little by little it slowly assembles or whatever and goes into these shapes and whatever, assembles. Essentially, it's just an unfolding process, and there's a microcosm to it as well. So in our speech, in our language, and in our communication, and our use of sound, it stimulates the environment around us in subtle ways that we may not be conscious of. In fact, one of the things that they teach about was that because life is conscious and sound is and energy is beingness, you might say, and the vibration is the expression of the absolute, and in terms of all different kinds of frequencies and manifestations, that how we participate in it and make our sounds and everything in life begins to assemble and make the way that our life becomes, so there's an intention. Again, I was talking about in the previous video about our intention is involved in creation, and that's a beautiful thing, because if we understand that if we make beautiful music, it's almost like we're participating in that infinite creator, unnameable, whatever consciousness, and expressing something particularly beautiful or harmonic and so on this physical dimension in our bodies and so on. So sound is a very, very powerful part of creation, and ancient people talked about that, and we're getting back to frequencies and ratios and so on, and the color of sound and the sound of color, and there's things like that happen. Now, ancient teachings had this basis on 360 degrees, and they aligned, for example, you can make a calendar, for example, based on the stars, and if you basically, as above, so below. So if, let's say, for example, you go out one night and you observe certain stars, you observe the planets, and you mark a rock over there. You say, okay, we're going to stand in the center, like they do these rock calendars, like Stonehenge or something, and they see the moon rise over here, they put a rock there. They see the moon rise over there, they put a rock there, or whatever. And the same with the sun, the planets. So you go, okay, after a while, you get a circle. And then you get some ratios, and then you start dividing up. The ancients decide on the 360, the 60, the base 60, the 12. There's a lot of factors, so therefore they can make their calculations easier in math. So again, sound has resonance in the materials of the earth. For example, we may not think about this, but for example, that Great Pyramid is sitting on a beautiful, beautiful flat plain, perfectly flat in stone, and then it's shaped in a certain way, and that thing even to this day is making some vibration. You can bet it will, because even though it's not as perfect as it used to be, that earth vibrates, and the earth vibrates through the material that's on it, the rocks and the whatever the earth is constructed of, and it makes a sonic vibration through, maybe it's subsonic, we can't hear it, maybe there's resonances that we can't hear, but anything on the surface of the earth, a particularly Great Pyramid or something, it's going to vibrate, and it's going to, because if it's made of stone, it's going to direct all that attention right to the point. And ancient teachers knew about this kind of stuff. It's called the ancient science, the ancient esoteric science, and esoteric math, the way they use geometry. Now, a little bit about shapes, physical shapes, dimensions. Now, if you conceive of, for example, let's say you have a room that's full of this mist, just to have a visualization. It's a mist of some particles or suspended particles through the whole space of a room, or for example. And then if let's say you interpose, you bring in like another shape, like let's say you bring in a giant sphere. You're in a room and you bring in this big huge sphere or a pyramid, and you're imposing that new physical space, that new geometry on the space that it's in. For example, so let's say the room is filled with this mist or something, and then you bring in this object, and then the mist has to move, okay? So basically, in a very, very subtle way, by bringing another physical object into another area, like building a pyramid or building a structure of any kind, you're now imposing a certain type of geometry or a certain type of resonance or shape into that physical space. So you're going from something that's unmanifested and then you're going into something that's manifested. For example, let's say you have a total plane like Stonehenge. There's nothing there, absolutely nothing, okay? And then you build a mechanical stone structure that has electrical magnetic free parts of it, and you pick certain kinds of materials, and you pick certain kinds of spacing, mathematically decided, and then you impose this physical structure. Maybe it's like a dense material, like a stone or a granite or something like that. You impose this new physical space on an empty space. Now, there's something very symbolic and esoteric and profound about that. Because if you think about space as an entity, or there is cosmic consciousness in every place, for example, so whatever you disturb or whatever you put there is going to affect what was there before, if you understand. So when we build physical structures, there's a certain profound aspect of it, because you're imposing a shape or a form or energy movement or something onto a space that was there that wasn't there before. So when you think about some of these pyramids that are built around the world, in addition to the physical shape that we look at, you just look at them, okay, they have an interesting shape and there's a lot of mathematical correspondences, but then think about the sound that they might emanate, or the vibration on a subtle level, that the earth is vibrating and vibrating and vibrating 24/7. Now, in some of the pyramids that they made up in New Mexico, not New Mexico, but Mexico, I believe it was up in the Peru. Anyway, there's a place out there that some of the pyramids they found, the Mayan pyramids, had mercury underneath them. Now, if you know about mercury or mica, there's another substance they found. You can make a great capacitor, tremendously functional thing underneath one of these pyramids, and that when the earth vibrates, it'll vibrate that whole pool of mercury or mica interaction and produce an energy, and then it'll direct it up right up through that shape of the pyramid. So again, it gets back to energy. There's one sage that I read about, Carlos Castaneda. There's this particular shaman that he met. He said that the seers see things as energy. They don't just see a shape. They see there's an energetic function of our body that is beyond what we normally conceive of. You see, we are literally living in other dimensions because there's water, there's heat, there's energy, there's frequency, there's color, there's light, there's sound, there's things emanating from our being that's kind of like, in a really simple analogy, they say you're riding a horse, and you're sitting on top of this physical horse, but the horse has got some function of its own. It's got heat, it's got makes sound, and it farts or makes noises or whatever. But there's just that way, our whole being is interdimensional and integrated into our existence. So we have to be in that place that I mentioned before, the non-duality observational point of view. Now, getting back to this particular subject here, sound is a thing that we can observe. We can see the physical waves. We can throw a rock into a pond, and we can see those kinds of effects of vibration, and we can use the analogy of above so below, that our voices and our conduct and everything makes various shapes, you might say, various energy fields that go on, and that is a part of our being. And if we want to manifest things in our life, it really helps to understand that who we are as a being. Because let's say you're holding a chainsaw and you think, well, I don't know what this chainsaw do. I just got one. I throw it, turn it on. Like, let's see what I'm going to do with this thing, and you may cut something by accident. Our being, if we get some kind of understanding of our own physical nature and physiological nature that's integrated into our system of endocrine system and our brain and the nerves and the water in our body and so on, the sound in our body, that we are a functional part of the creation that we're in. And depending on what we do and how we perceive, then, you know, it makes a big difference in the way we conduct our life. Now, math. There is, I think it was the Platonic, Plato or whatever, there was a couple philosophers in the Greek area that would like think, well, everything is just integers. You have to use integers. And what's this thing about the irrational numbers and all that? Now, it just turns out that a lot of the life things like flowers unfolding and trees and our genetics and everything, it has a lot to do with these ratios that are called irrational. There's something that kind of slips between the cracks between the ones and the twos, the threes and the fours. You got this number pi. Between 1 and 2 you got 1.618. You got these ratios, like, they seem a little odd, but they sure are functional in the way that we can create. Now, if we participate in that type of, if we know the geometry of our body and the chemicals and so on, and we say, well, let's cooperate with that geometry, with that so-called sacred geometry, and participate and make our creations and manifestations like our architecture. I mean, it sure would be nice if we had a little better architecture out there that made beautiful places instead of boxes in the sky. I mean, wouldn't it be nice to maybe have some domes to live in, or at least some public event situations where at least they're holy space, that like the cathedrals of old, and they don't build stuff like they used to. Cathedrals, so you go in there and you can just whisper and you can look up and see the colors and the rays coming in, the angles and all the different geometry, and it just speaks to your soul. So ultimately, the science and invention that we participate in, this is about a series about science and math, that we need to use that with our consciousness to make elegant, beautiful things and make the world harmonious. Because if we pretend that we're not going to be affected by interposing certain things, like for example, when we make a city and we make a certain kind of construction, and we don't, the feng shui, you might say, the movement of entry, it's like totally unconscious, like we're not making it harmonious. We got to use our brain and our geometry and harmony to make our world, our cities and our buildings and our homes have a sacred geometry and relationship, so proportion. So I don't want to make these videos too long and get little segments here, but the esoteric seers, the esoteric science has a lot to do with expressing and manifesting the harmony and the beauty of existence in our constructions, in our manifestations, whether it be music or sound or buildings or anything, in the way we conduct our life or the way we make our art, but that it's expressed in a way that is complementary to the basic unfoldment of the rest of the cosmos. You see, because if you make something if you construct something that really shouldn't be there, I mean, how many times have you looked at certain buildings and like, that shouldn't be there, or that piece of art, that nobody should have made that piece of art. But we can use that math and geometry and sound, and basically sound is in this dimensions of it gets into like feng shui with the way the energy reflects and bounces off our environment. If it's harmonious and if there's ratios that are nice, then every sound that we make in a building will make a beautiful echo. So that's a little bit about esoteric science and math and so on, and I'm going to go into some other things in the next few videos, but reflect on these things. And who am I? I'm nobody. I just have some experience of meditation and study the esoteric mysteries of old, and try to observe and reflect on, have a conversation about some of the things that I've observed. They're inward. They're things that we all know. We are like a mirror to each other. So when we see each other talk and we listen to each other express, we are basically listening to our own being, or the cosmic intelligence helping us understand a little bit more about our existence. So thanks again for watching, and please like and share. And if you get something from this, I'd love to know and hear some commentary. Thanks again.